So thank you all for coming for the second day of the seminar. Yesterday we talked about the forgiveness quality of Krishna and how Krishna asks us to emulate that same quality. And we talked about the different ways in which Krishna is forgiving. How he ignores our intention, he ignores our action, he ignores intention and action, depending on what is best for us. Right? He always gives us the benefit of the doubt. And then he asks us to do the same thing. But the one thing he is not capable of forgiving himself is offenses committed to devotees. And typically those offenses are committed by other aspiring devotees. And so the bulk of this seminar today and tomorrow is dedicated to this question of how do we seek forgiveness from someone we have wronged, that's today, and how do we forgive someone who has wronged us, that's tomorrow, or we'll see how it splits up. So that's the plan for these days. So please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnantimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So the first question I want to raise is a really basic but very important question, which is, how do we know when we have wronged someone, when we should be asking for forgiveness? We step on people's toes all the time in the course of day-to-day life, and some of those are immediately excused by the person upon whose toe we step. Sometimes literally, sometimes metaphorically. We say something and whoops, I didn't mean to say that, I'm sorry, and okay, and life goes on. So when do we know that, or how do we know that we have to take some conscious effort to ask forgiveness from someone? Any suggestions as to what the markers? There's no right official answer for this, where I'm going to say, oh, you got it. But in your experience, what are those markers that we notice in our lives that indicate to us that something has to be said for forgiveness? Prabhu?
Self-awareness, so when conscience or Paramatma prompts us from within. Good.
So when conscience or Paramatma prompts us from within, I'll say more about that. That's a very important point. What else? Yes.
You know, we feel our sadhana is down or something happening, change in our spiritual practice.
So this is a really good point also, that we can feel that we require some forgiveness when we feel some weakness in our own spiritual life, in our own Krishna consciousness. Our sadhana might be down, or we're not feeling, we don't have confidence in ourselves as much as we should, because we feel some weakness. Good. How else do we know that someone needs to be requested forgiveness?
Usually the people will let you know who are offended by their behavior. They will be more avoiding you, or they will let you know in words.
Yes.
Or yeah, by their big cheeks usually. They
yes.
figure out.
Yes. So yes, actually the big cheeks thing, in Hindi there's a phrase, "Muh phula hua hai." The face is big, and it means someone is upset. Right? It's swollen. So by observing people's body language, sometimes they say it, and sometimes it's just they're avoiding you, or you can tell that there's something stuck in the relationship. There's something odd, something changed, and we're not sure why or how. In situations like this, others can be very helpful in helping us recognize this, particularly spouses, right? So often we're oblivious to what's happening in a relationship. This happens to me, right, where I don't realize that I've said something, And then my wife will point out, you know, I think there's something a little odd there, right? Maybe he took offense at what you said that day, right? And it may be not a major thing, but it can become a major thing if it's not dealt with promptly and properly. And so, or for wives and husbands, right? This partnership that we have in the family as grihastas, as family people, we should take advantage of that. There are many challenges of running a family or being within a family, but there are some very important advantages also. And since we all face the challenges of running a family, well, why not take advantage of the benefits also? And one of the great benefits of being in family is that you have a team that can help you understand when something has gone off. Because very often we have a blind spot to our own behavior. Very often we're not, we can see everything in this world clearly except for our own wrongdoing. It's just, we're hardwired, right, to just not perceive that. So when someone else who we know is not out to kill us is ready to point out our mistake in a gentle or good way, then it's very useful actually, it's very helpful. So observing another person's body language or their behavior, or if that's not, if we don't notice their behavior, then possibly someone else might. A family member, a friend, their friend, a well-wishing devotee, someone who says it in a backward way, right? They'll indicate it in an indirect way. That can give us a good indication. How else? How else can we know that we might be in need of some kind of apology? Any other thoughts? So, yeah.
In your own consciousness, you feel like you shouldn't have done that.
Yes. Yes. So this point both of you brought up is very important. You know, let me ask you so in the story of Durvasa Muni and Ambarish Maharaj, okay? So for those who have not heard the story, this is really one of the most wonderful accounts in Srimad Bhagavatam, really brilliant. Durvasa Muni is, as you may know, prone to anger, and it's his weak spot. And he comes once to Ambarish Maharaj's place for his meals. And Durvasa Muni also has a habit of getting particularly angry when he's hungry. And so he's done this before with the Pandavas also, or there was potential of it. But he went to Ambarish Maharaj and was there for prasad. And Ambarish Maharaj was just finishing a fast for Ekadashi, except it was a year-long Ekadashi fast. He had fasted from the Ekadashi in 1 year to the same Ekadashi in the next year, and was just getting ready to break the fast on Dwadashi day. So if you don't break the Ekadashi fast at the proper time, you don't complete it at the proper time, the word is paran or completion, then the result is said to be not there. So it was a major dilemma, especially after you put in a year's worth of effort to do this fast. So so Durvasa Muni shows up, he goes for his bath, as he usually does, just before he goes to eat. But around the time of his bath, before he was coming back, the time for completing his Ekadashi fast was just almost over. So Ambarish Maharaj had to do something. He had to eat. But the problem is that you're not supposed to eat before your guest has eaten, when a guest arrives to your home. It's improper, unethical to do that. So what to do? He consulted with his advisors, the court Brahmins, as to what a solution. They said, how about you take some water? So we know this was a nirjala fast, he was doing no water. So how about you take a little water, because water counts as food and it's also not food, it's in between. So you can break your fast, but not really break your fast, and you can feed your guests. So both will be done. He follows that, takes a little bit of water, Durvasa Muni finds out because he knows everything. He's able to see past, present, and future. He sees what's happened and he immediately gets really angry. He feels that he's been disrespected, he's been slighted. And in his anger, he pulls a piece of hair from his head and throws it onto the ground and curses Ambarish Maharaj with the creation of this demon who is going to kill Ambarish. That's the idea. So angry he was. And Ambarish Maharaj, he's not afraid. Bhagavatam says he's standing there, ready to meet his fate, and not retaliating either. But Lord Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra was always present with Maharaj Ambarish to protect him. And as soon as this happens, the Sudarshan Chakra appears on the scene and gets ready to kill Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni panics and runs. And he runs all throughout this world, everywhere, looking for protection. And then when he can't find it, moves upward in the universe. He can fly anywhere because he's a great sage. And he goes to Indra, and he goes to Lord Shiva, and he goes to Lord Brahma, and he even goes to Lord Vishnu, to whom it belongs, the Sudarshan Chakra. And everyone, besides Lord Vishnu, gives him the same message. Basically, look, the Sudarshan Chakra is way too strong. The Lord Vishnu's power is much greater than mine. Please stay away before we both get killed. Essentially, that's their message. Says, can't help you here. So in desperation, he goes to Lord Vishnu himself. And Mahavishnu says, I'm sorry, even I can't help you. But this is your chakra. He said, no, I can't. I told you this yesterday, that he says, my devotees are my heart, sadhavo hridayam mahyam, and they are in my heart, or I am in their hearts, and therefore I'm complete, aham bhakta paradhina, he says. I'm dependent upon paradhina, on my devotees. So the only thing you can do is go beg forgiveness from Maharaj Ambarish himself. So let me ask you what seems like a really simple and foolish question. How did Durvasa Muni know that he had done something wrong? That he had offended Ambarish Maharaj? What was the first sign to him that something was wrong? He had done something wrong.
First of all, the chakra came after him.
The chakra came. Right? The chakra was chasing him. That was a really obvious indication that something was severely wrong. Here's the point I want to make in relation to what both of you said, which is that chakra is there with us too. It chases after us too. That Sudarshan Chakra is the time factor. This is one of Sudarshan Chakra's manifestation is the sun, and this is Kala Chakra. One of Sudarshan's forms is the Kala Chakra. How does that verse go in Brahma Samhita? Yash chakshuresha savita sagalat grahana raja samasta suramurti ashesha teja yasyagaya brahmati samrita kala chakro govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. The sun god, the sun we see in the sky, which is but a small aspect of Sudarshan, is this wheel of time. It's the Lord's. We are faced with Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra every day of our lives. Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra is killing us gradually as the time factor. It's slowly chopping off our necks. Right? We're dying. Time is killing all of us. So we're faced with that. But that time factor that is externally present as time, as the rising and setting of the sun, that time factor internally is present. How? Where is it present within our hearts? In what form? That time factor is a manifestation of what? the super soul, the Paramatma. The Paramatma internally, he's there as the Lord within our heart. And on the outside, he manifests as time. So, in other words, that super soul within the heart is the Lord's manifestation, and he is the one whom we call our conscience. To the extent that we are in touch with Krishna, to the extent that our form, our body is purified, to the extent that our consciousness is purified, to that extent we can hear Krishna's voice within us. He guides us. Upadrashtanumantacha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapyukto dehismin purushapada. That within our hearts, Krishna is there and he's guiding all living entities, Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani. So the point is that Sudarshan Chakra of the Lord is there with us. And whenever we do something that warrants asking forgiveness, whenever we wrong someone or do something wrong, as devotees of Krishna, we can be sure that somewhere Krishna is going to knock and go, hello, there's something amiss here. Something's going to bite us. Our conscience bites us. It tells us that something is amiss. Now, we can ignore that. We can pretend as if we don't hear it. We can justify it to ourselves, and we can become hard. And that only leads to us closing up from that person and from others around us. And we develop this habit in this world of becoming very closed and very blocked off individuals, because we're living with, because of our ego, we're not able to admit this fact that the super soul is telling us, our conscience is telling us that something is wrong. Right? But we force ourselves to live with it because we cannot admit it. And it bites us, it eats us from the inside, and it makes our life very miserable. In this way, we get the reaction for what we have done. This scenario is very common in the life of an aspiring devotee, because we are in general in touch enough, our consciousness and our mind is purified enough where we can hear something of the super soul's voice, and it bites us. And that is a very good indication that we need to do something, right? Something to make amends. In addition to the external verification we get from that person's expression or body language, or someone says something to us, or one of their friends mentions something to us, right? Or we get a sarcastic comment and we understand, okay, something has gone wrong. Okay? So Krishna, he gives us indication at the right times, at the right moments, that something needs to be done about the situation. Now, the next question is, well, what are the... so say that we've come to recognize, by one of the many means that you've all mentioned, we come to recognize that something needs to be done. Even then, we may not be able to seek forgiveness. There are any number of different obstacles that stand in our path to asking for forgiveness. Why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult to genuinely ask for forgiveness for something we have wronged? What might stand in our way? Any thoughts or suggestions about that?
So ego.
Okay, so kind of simultaneous. Everyone said our ego, right? Our sense of pride. What are you afraid of in terms of our ego? What's going to happen to our ego in asking for forgiveness? What's at stake? Can anyone elaborate? I mean, you're right, 100%. But can anyone elaborate on what's the issue there? Yes.
You take the lower position than the other person.
We take the lower position. We look bad, right? We look bad. We want to cultivate an image of ourselves that we are proper and we do the right thing and we approach things properly. Right? We want to create that thing that I follow the straight and narrow path, and yet I've made a mistake, it's really tough to come before that person and make ourselves less in front of them. So the big challenge, the first big challenge, is pride. And the first big challenge is mustering the humility that's needed to take that step. Sometimes we can people often say that humility is a very impractical quality to have. That when we try to be humble to someone, then in the real world it doesn't actually work, because the real world is not very nice. When you're humble to people, then what's the risk? Well, yeah.
People take advantage of you.
People take advantage of you, right? And how might they do that? How might they take advantage of you if you humble yourself before them?
Exploiting you.
They can exploit you, right? What more? What more? I mean, how can they exploit you? What's the fear that we have of humbling ourselves before someone?
You could go into a rent or something.
Yeah, they might crush us, right? So one possibility is that they could try to use us for something. They could exploit us. Another possibility is that they see that you're down, so why not crush you further?
Yeah.
This is the general approach in this world. It's actually a big problem in this world. That once someone is down, then the natural tendency is that you crush them further. Why not take advantage of that situation to boost your own ego? And we see this when someone is homeless on the street or a beggar. People will speak to them with extra disrespect. They're already humiliated. Right? Who wants to live on the street? Who wants to come out and beg? But we take the advantage of speaking to them extra rudely. Why? Because that person is clearly not a threat to us, so we might as well use them. So there's this fear we have of humbling ourselves, which is a challenge, it's a problem. That might involve someone crushing us, someone exploiting us. What else? What else are we afraid of in humbling ourselves before someone? Yes?
They might broadcast that particular fault that we admitted to
Yes.
to the whole world, and could make it a characteristic of ours, whereas it could be just a one-off.
Yes. Yes. So our reputation might be ruined. Right? Our reputation might be ruined. And particularly if we have some position. If we have some position, then we might lose that position. I mean, think in Durvasa Muni's case. He had a pretty elevated position to protect there. He was the a great, well-known sage. And rishis and sages and swamis and sannyasis don't bow down to kings. It's the other way around. A worldly person should bow to a sage, not the other way around. So there was a lot at stake, right? I mean, it's hard to believe that that Durvasa, it didn't occur to Durvasa Muni that I could go make up with Ambarish Maharaj. I mean, he's one of the wisest sages, right? So much knowledge is there. Surely he's attended some seminar like this, where there was discussion about the importance of forgiveness. In fact, in the first canto of Bhagavatam, Bhishma Dev's instructions to Yudhishthira Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that there are a few things that are called samanya dharma. They are general dharmas for everyone. Right? Some dharmas Most forms of dharma in this world are specific to a person's position. Certain dharmas for fathers and mothers, and certain dharmas for children, and certain dharmas for brahmins, and certain dharmas for kshatriyas. But there are certain types of duties that are applicable for everyone, for all human beings. These are called samanya dharma, for all. And being able to ask forgiveness and give forgiveness, to forgive, is a samanya dharma. Means everyone is expected to engage in that. Doesn't matter who you are. So surely Durvasa Muni understood this basic point. And yet it was so difficult for him to do it. I mean, he first made a whole parikrama of the whole universe before he finally came down to ask the person because of whom the problem started. Clearly there was his position at stake. I can bow before Indra, and I can bow before Lord Shiva and Mahadev, and I can ask for protection from Brahmaji, but I can't bow before him because he's just a king. He was supposed to respect me. I was his guest. I had come to give him wisdom and knowledge and blessings. So that fear is real, of losing one's reputation, one's position. Yes.
I think so. It's also like sense of control or identification of oneself with material designations. You know, like pure devotee, like they don't care if they're praised or they get accused. You know, but you know, if the moment we identify ourselves with the body or positions, or then we feel we will lose the control or sense of perception about ourselves, because no matter what, we tend to think, even we are worst of the worst, we tend to think we are the greatest.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
that sensation.
Yes, it's born from identification with our body, definitely. And even more deep than identification with our body is identification with our mind and our intelligence. That this idea that I am someone, and this is a certain mental conception we have, right, of position, of status, and all of that. And that identification is very deep. Right? Even someone like Durvasa Muni, who was self-realized, so he understood that I'm not this material body, and yet his identification was with his buddhi, with his intelligence. I am such a, this is me, my great knowledge and my great position. Brahma's problem was the same when he offended Krishna, was his identification with his intelligence, which was vast, right? So that identification is more subtle with the mind and with the intelligence, and more difficult to get rid of than the identification with the body, which is there, but over time, this material world will teach us we're not this body. As we grow older, particularly, we come to understand this point. Yes, please.
What's scary in this pastime is that Durvasa Muni had the spiritual capability of going to see Mahavishnu, right, which no one in the material world ordinarily does, and yet he committed offense and identified with his position. So this is such a lesson that, you know, our little us can be like, we have to be like constantly watchful.
Yes.
Of not offending anyone else.
Yes. Yes, that's a good point, that Durvasa Muni had the spiritual capacity to even approach Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha, or Shvetadvip, or wherever, but he could come in the association of the Lord, right? And yet still no one could save him. So this is the challenge with that kind of offense, right? That it doesn't matter. We may be, you know, we may be daily worshipping the Lord. We may be the best pujari in the whole world, and we may have the most beautiful deity worship at home, and we may be chanting our 16 rounds perfectly, and we may be just, our sadhana may be 110%, and yet, if an offense is committed towards a devotee, none of that can save us. I mean, that's the moral, that we may be face to face with the Lord, right? Directly in contact with Him. And yet, Krishna may say, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Of course, if we're that close to the Lord, Krishna will give us guidance. Right? And then it's up to us. Then the choice is ours. Are we going to heed that voice of the Paramatma within our heart, or are we going to ignore it? But that threat of losing our ego is such a great threat that we're willing to go to amazing extents to avoid just that one little thing. Right? I mean, that's the message, that's one of the messages from the Durvasa Muni story, that we may not have the ability to fly up to Vaikuntha, but we sometimes go through some pretty amazing hoops to preserve, to protect our situation, to preserve our ego, to do everything but actually deal with the cause of the issue, whatever it is biting within our hearts, that we have wronged someone. So we'll do everything under the sun to try to, we'll avoid that person, we'll do some indirect, sometimes indirectly, we'll try to indicate to that person an apology, or we'll go talk to the whole world about how we're actually justified. This is another Durvasa Muni complex, right? Everyone in this world he went to explain why he was okay. Not my mistake. See, I'm okay. And we do this often, right? We wrong one person, and then we know something's biting in us. So then we go on and we tell the story of what happened to 5 other people, and talk about how, I don't know, like how I can understand how they behaved in that way. Really, it was wrong, wasn't it? I mean, they treated me like that, and he spoke like that in the meeting, and it was just not very good. And we're trying to justify our behavior by pointing the finger at the other person and talk to 5 other people in the process. Our local Indra and our local Mahadev and our local Brahma. We speak to everyone except for the person who could actually solve the problem, which is the person we actually wronged. So, in regards to this point of pride, there's 2 things about humility, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. Amanina, manavena, right? 2 ingredients he gives. And my own experience has been that it's much easier to practice manavena than amanina. If you're consciously trying to practice, namely the 2 things is giving respect to others and not expecting any respect in return. The act of giving respect to others, honoring others, this is an aspect of humility, I think, that regardless of what our fears are about the other person exploiting us or crushing us or whatever, instead of putting ourselves down, which is frankly really difficult to do, it takes a lot of advancement in humility to be Trinadapi Sunichena, to be like a blade of grass, which means to put yourself on the ground and become a doormat. Okay? That's very tough. So one place I think we can start with is this element of manavena, of being able to give honor to others. Give honor to others. I think it's important to recognize that even in the quote-unquote real world, outside the community of devotees, no one ever becomes less, ever is at a disadvantage. No one is ever weakened by giving genuine respect, appreciation, honor to someone else. Even in the workplace, if you offer genuine appreciation for someone else's success, good qualities, excellent idea, great management skills, whatever it might be, if we find someone and offer them genuine appreciation, then it doesn't devalue our position, it only elevates it. The natural response of people is to be nice to you, if not to elevate you. It's at least to be nice to you. This is natural in this world when we find people who offer that genuine appreciation. Even for people who do not attempt to practice humility or amanina, manadena or any of that. But there's something really powerful and and really amazing and something very rare in this world, to find someone who genuinely appreciates what you do. And even a non-devotee, even a karmi, can recognize that when it's seen in someone else. This is what makes devotees very special. This is what helps a devotee stand out, is to recognize that this person is not threatened by someone else's success. And this is the real reality in this world, is that when we give credit to another, we never lose credit ourselves. I teach this to my students in a very different context. In regards to citations, you know, often they'll write papers and they'll copy something from the internet or from a book, and they won't give proper credit for where they got it from. Now, this is plagiarism. And plagiarism is a serious enough offense to get you a failing grade on the assignment at a minimum, a failing grade in the course if it's a significant problem, or get you kicked out of the university as a whole if it happens more than once. Most universities now have tracking systems for plagiarism. So each professor is required to report an instance of plagiarism to a central system, so that the next time it happens, the university knows it wasn't the first time. So you cannot be a serial offender and go through your various classes. And one of the things I tell my students, I say, I mean, we all do, all of the faculty, you will never, ever lose credit in your paper, in your idea. No one will think of it as less brilliant by giving credit to where you got the idea from. Ever. In fact, it makes you look smarter. It makes you look smarter, like you know your field. You're standing on the shoulders of giants. And that makes you look taller. So the same is true in life in general. That we don't lose credit by giving credit to others. And therefore this element of manadena is a great place to begin practicing that third verse of Shikshashtaka, that humility. And it's also a great place to begin the asking of forgiveness. If you look at the asking of forgiveness in every instance in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the case of Durvasa and Ambarish, in the case of Parikshit Maharaj and Shringi, in the instance of Jai and Vijay, in every instance, in Indra and Krishna, in Brahma and Krishna, when the person comes to ask forgiveness, what's the first thing that they do? The very first thing.
Glorify others.
They express genuine appreciation for the person whom they have wronged. And there's a twofold reason for this. One, it softens the other person and makes it more likely that they're going to accept the apology, that they're going to understand it as genuine. And secondly, it makes it easier for us to make the apology. When we express appreciation for someone, it's the easiest way to get over whatever knot or pain or rift there is within our heart, or whatever fear we have that might be in the path of asking for forgiveness. Yeah, Prabhu.
And maybe you'll come to this, but you know, in many situations in devotional life, especially when we're doing work at like a management level or in GVCs or whatever, sometimes it's rarely a clear-cut case of I have offended you.
Yes.
It's usually a case of a mutual offense.
Yes.
Meaning, I've ticked you off and you've done something to earn that, and you've ticked me off.
Yes.
How do you deal with that situation?
Excellent. So this was in the sequence, but this is the perfect time to address it. So very often, the point that Yashoda Prabhu is making is that it's it's not a clear-cut case. I made a mistake against you, I'm sorry. Right? It's usually a mutual something that happens. And this is why I particularly like these stories in Bhagavatam of one devotee offending another devotee. See, with the case of Indra and Krishna, which is useful in many ways, and we discussed this yesterday, it's very black and white. Krishna is God, he can't do anything wrong. He was merely making the point that I'm God, and Indra didn't get it, and he committed an offense, so he had to come and say sorry. But let's take the story of Parikshit Maharaj and Shamik Rishi and Shringi. Now, in that instance, Maharaj Parikshit goes into the forest for hunting, and he's overcome by thirst and hunger, comes to the ashram of a sage looking for some relief. The minimal thing that any host is supposed to do for a guest, if you don't have great gifts to give, if you don't have a lot of food prepared, it's okay. The minimum we can do is a seat to sit on, a glass of water to drink, and some sweet words. And Shamik Rishi failed in giving him all three of those things. He was engaged in meditation, oblivious to what was happening, and the king was overcome by thirst and hunger, and he became upset, he became angry, frustrated, and thought, what is he doing? Is he really in trance or not? Is he just faking it? Is he trying to avoid greeting a Kshatriya because he's such a Raman, right? And I'm just a lowly Kshatriya? So he had all these doubts. He questioned his intent, his motivations, and put a dead snake around his neck. He got angry, and so in retaliation, got irritated. He found a dead snake outside the ashram and put it around Shamik Rishi's neck. Shringi was his son. He heard, not heard, yeah, he got word of what had happened. And he was just a little boy playing with his friends, 7, 8 years old. And he got so angry at what had happened that he cursed the king to die in 7 days. Now, in that situation, who needed to apologize? Everyone. I mean, basically everyone had made a mistake. The king should not have lost his temper. I mean, he should have given the benefit of the doubt to the king, to Shamik Rishi. He must be in meditation and therefore not recognizing I'm here. Shamik Rishi should have been more conscious of what was happening around him, right? Not so absorbed in his sadhana that he didn't recognize when another devotee came to his home. And Shringi should definitely not have cursed the king. Such a small offense and such a big reaction. So, in this situation, all three had done something wrong. Some little more than others. The greatest offense was on the part of Shringi, who gave such a horrible curse. And yet, he was also the least culpable because he was a child. Right? So it was a very confusing, complex situation, which is exactly the type of thing that happens in our lives. Very rarely is it a black and white situation. Now here's the interesting thing, based on what we were saying earlier. What's interesting is that all three felt the pangs of guilt right after they did it. Bhagavatam specifies this point. That Parikshit Maharaj, he had basically just left the hermitage, the ashram of the sage, and he's thinking in himself, was he really ignoring me? Maybe he was genuinely in samadhi. Did I do the right thing? Maybe I overreacted here. I really should have not done that. He's feeling guilty, like within minutes of leaving. And Shringi, the little boy, comes to his father from playing after he does this and breaks down in tears. He's crying and wailing which finally does wake his father up out of his samadhi. And the reason he's crying and wailing is because he knows he's done something wrong. He's torn, he's pained. You know, like when children particularly, they've done something wrong, they don't know how to react, they just cry. They'll spill a glass of milk and then they'll cry. Because they know they've done something wrong, they don't know how to process that, so they just cry. So he started wailing and crying. And Shami Rishi felt so bad and so guilty for what had happened. He felt terrible. And he sent a message to Parikshit Maharaj with notifying him of what had happened and that his death was imminent, with his apologies. He sent a message, a personal message. We don't know, written or he sent a messenger, we don't know. All three, the super soul within the heart was knocking and telling them, you know, something's gone wrong here. Something's not right. And in this situation, all three made amends. But here's the point. Another obstacle to asking for forgiveness is that we often fear, and it often is the case, that we end up having to apologize for more than what we did. The blame is of three ways, but the apology seems to come only from us. Is it?
Yeah.
It happens.
That was my question. Who should apologize first in that mutual situation?
Whoever is the wisest. Means, this is the point. We will never lose out by asking for forgiveness, ever. There's not one recorded instance in all the scriptures that someone asked for forgiveness and they were the loser, that they lost. If we have to ask for forgiveness, we have to apologize for something we didn't do, it's okay. If we have to apologize for something a little more than what we did, it's okay. Sometimes in the process of apologizing, there's some collateral damage. The essential point is we recognize that I need to make an apology. To do that effectively, if we have to end up doing a little more than we wanted, if we end up having to take responsibility for a little more than what we deserve, if we had hoped that it would be mutual, that we would say, I'm so sorry, Prabhu, for what I did, and we were hoping that they would come back and say, actually, I'm also sorry, and it never happened, it's still okay. Right? It's still okay. Because the bottom line is, ultimately, we want to go back to God. That's the real victory. Ultimately, it's our Krishna consciousness at stake. We can win the fight. We can spend all day proving that I was actually, see, my mistake was from point A to point B. But from point B to point C, that was you. And we can force that person to confess. But in the end, if the relationship is still broken, if the offense is not, if the forgiveness is not taken or overcome, then what's the point? Right? In the end, what difference is it going to make? The difference is that we will still carry around this great burden on ourselves. It's a great burden in our life to carry with us the feeling that we have wronged someone, that someone is unhappy with what we have done. And people often spend a good amount of time before their death trying to make last-minute amends for what they have done, isn't it? Begging for forgiveness. I'm sorry about this, and I'm sorry about that, and I'm sorry. It happens all the time. Why wait till then? Why wait till then? We'll end up doing it. Why? Why do people do it at the moment of death? or just before? Because at that point, it doesn't matter anymore. Right? It doesn't matter. We realize what matters is I'm going to go to my next life or my next destination with this burden on my back. And the fact that I was right or wrong, what difference does it make when I'm long gone and my body's in the ground or I'm in the fire? It doesn't matter. But that's a perspective we can carry now. We can imbibe now. We can understand. We can recognize that in the end, I need to advance. I need to advance. And if that means I need to do a little extra, if I have to be the one from the three who caused the offense, if I'm the only one who comes forward, so be it. So be it.
Two scenarios where if you could shed some light on how to address those. One is where devotees, there's familiarity that develops, and I offend you, but I think you're not a devotee. Okay, I understand not offending Prabhupada or my spiritual master because they're pure. The moment I feel that you're not pure because of your actions, and that's why I did what I did. So it's okay because you're not a devotee anymore. So how to address that? That's one scenario. The other is, I offended you, and I realize that, but now you're demanding apology from me. Is that correct too? Because many times devotees or others feel that unless that person comes and apologizes, and we try to make that happen, like go and apologize. But that demand itself, demanding apology, I think is not qualifies you to be a devotee.
Yes. So the question basically is what about when we recognize that this person is actually not a very advanced devotee? We have that feeling. What if we recognize the fact that this person has a lot of faults? That was part of the equation, and therefore they are not deserving of me asking for apology. I can apologize to Guru, I can apologize to Krishna, but why apologize to X, Y, and Z person who's, I've lived with him or her for so long and we've served together, and that person has a lot of problems, frankly. So they don't deserve the same level of, we're not speaking of Ambarish Maharaj here. So that mood can be there. And it can be made worse by the fact that that person is demanding an apology, which is not very cultured or kind. Right? It's a pretty strong thing to do. So we addressed this just briefly last time, yesterday, right? That in Krishna's eyes, who counts as a devotee is very, very generous, very broad. So we make our own narrower definitions at our own risk. This is essentially a Kanishta Adhikari mentality. You find it in all religions around the world. My scripture tells me that I should be kind to other Vaishnavas, to other Hindus, to other Muslims, to other Christians. You should be generous to your brothers and sisters in the faith. So what's the easiest way around that injunction? When I really don't want to be nice to someone? Declassify them as a Vaishnava or a Hindu or a Muslim. You're not part of the group that's protected by the Lord. That's the easiest way. Then I can do whatever I want. Or not whatever, but I can be more free in my behavior. And I have less requirement. But we saw yesterday that Krishna's definition of who counts in that category is so broad and so big. In the case of Dhruva Maharaj, even future devotees count. That we don't want to be in a situation that we're sitting across from someone we've offended. 10 years from now, they're, Bhakti something Swami Maharaj. And now we have to face the fact that I offended that person. It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. We're all going to advance. And that little devotee who was not worthy of asking forgiveness from, one day might end up becoming a really dedicated devotee of the Lord. The other thing is that those faults that we see in that person, our natural mood, we see those faults in someone is, when we focus on a particular fault, we think that fault becomes so big in our mind, right? Suppose someone is disrespectful to us. They insult us in a meeting, or they say something nasty about our children or about ourselves or whatever. In our mind, that fault becomes so big that we cannot see any of the good qualities that that person might have. And that is a product of another big obstacle to asking for forgiveness. This is the next one I wanted to talk about. The first one was pride. Okay? The first one was dealing with our ego. But the second one, the second big obstacle to asking forgiveness is anger. It's anger. In each one of the scenarios that several of you have brought up, the wrong is in multi directions. Right? So not only is it a process of humbling ourselves, but it's also a challenge of giving up anger that we have built up in ourselves. Anger, in fact, is such an obstacle to forgiveness that it's the number one obstacle in both directions. It's the number one obstacle that prevents us from asking for forgiveness, and it's the number one obstacle that prevents us from giving forgiveness, from forgiving someone else, is anger. Because we think, this person has done this thing wrong to me. And that problem becomes so big in our minds that our feeling is that whatever good qualities they may have are completely useless if they cannot get this one thing right. And frankly, they deserve to be crushed by Krishna for what they have done. And then we wonder, how is it that they're going on? And everyone still likes them, and everyone still loves them, and they have this good position, and they're serving Krishna, and like, how is it that others are honoring them? And we become more and more angry. Because we see that one fault, which is probably a real fault, right? Which is probably, I mean, we're not always wrong, right? It's probably a genuine mistake they had. But because of our focus on that one thing, we cannot see anything else around it. So let me ask you another question then. What is the problem with anger? We know anger is a problem, right? But what is it? If we try to analyze it, what's the issue with anger? Why does it have such a poor effect in our, yeah?
Yeah, it takes away our portion of it.
Who is deploying it? And over time, if that anger is not dealt with or calmed down, it will burn us up alive. Right? It will destroy whatever humanity we have inside us. Because anger is like fire. You can throw it at someone, but the person who's throwing it, their hand is also burnt. Right? It's also, you're also pained by that anger. No rest, no peace of any kind. Right? Anger doesn't allow you to rest in any circumstance. Good. What else? Yes?
blinds you from seeing the whole picture and seeing holistically that there are good things about the other person. It may be worth letting this go. It blinds you from seeing because it kind of magnifies that one thing you're angry about and becomes the central part of your consciousness.
Yes. So it's completely disproportionate. Right? It makes things disproportionate. You see one little thing, as we were saying, you see one little thing and it becomes everything. Right? It blows everything out of proportion. And we become incapable of seeing all the good things that that person has because of the one thing that is causing us anger. Excellent. Yes. What else?
This is a variation of, it clouds our intellect. The first devotee said that. It blinds us to our overall self-interest, so the big picture that Madan Gopal Prabhu just talked about. And it promotes short-term vengeance-seeking behavior.
Yes. Yes. Short-term vengeance-seeking behavior. The need for revenge, which is the main reason why we do horrible things, right? In the space of anger, we end up perpetuating the karmic cycle. We may think. So here's the irony of the cycle of karma. Okay, so I did something terrible. Okay, to Madan Gopal Prabhu. Okay? It's my tradition to pick on him in my classes in New Jersey.
I'll forgive you after the class.
Yes, okay. So,
cycle of karma.
Yes.
I have to learn how to forgive.
So I do something terrible to him. Or let's do it the other way around. Okay? He does something terrible to me. That feels better. So he does something terrible to me. Now, as a result of what he's done, say, I feel angry about that. Now, let's say that's a genuine mistake he made. Okay, so let's say that my estimation of the situation is correct, and he did in fact do something improper. So he deserves a reaction for it. And in the law of karma tells us that he should get a reaction for what he did. In fact, he will. So I think, well, why not me? I'll give it to him. I come back and I slap him for what he's done. Now, Madan Gopal Prabhu, has just been freed of the bad karma that he had collected from harming me. And what have I done? I've just gained some fresh bad karma on myself. Because everyone deserves to get what is coming to them. And that's what karma says. Karma does not say that everyone deserves to give others what is coming to them. Right? In other words, the law of karma promises you that someone who wrongs you will get what they deserve. It does not promise you that you will get to give it to them. That you will have the pleasure of seeing them suffer for what they have done to you. And that's what we're really after, right? That's what anger, that vengeance-seeking behavior, that's what we're really looking for, is the satisfaction of giving it to them, or at least of watching them suffer for what they have done. And that, the law of karma does not promise anyone. In fact, it's the opposite. If we become the instrument in giving someone their karma, we will get karma in return for that. We have just perpetuated, this is called the cycle of karma, what is it? Gahano karmana gati, Krishna says. Gahana karmano gati. He says, the gati, the movement of karma is gahana, Krishna says. It's really dense, because this is what happens in this world. It flies in all directions. And who's responsible for what? Pretty soon you can't figure it out. You have harmed X, they've harmed you back, and then you said something there. And by the end of it, no one knows who was more at fault. Who caused it, who started it, who was... Then we always go back to this point, well, you started it. Therefore, it's still your fault. that's not very good logic, right? It's childish logic. In the case of Parikshit and Shringi and Shami Rishi, who started it? Parikshit Maharaj, but he was least at fault. He was least at fault in that situation. Very little fault on his part. And Shami Rishi accepted that point, that for a very small mistake, you have punished someone who was nearly innocent. Right? So what happens is we cannot figure out, it's been back and forth, the cycle has become so complicated, we cannot figure out who's at fault eventually. And so then we fall back on this point that, oh, it must be the person who started it. But there's no law in the Vedas, there's no injunction in the scriptures that says the person who started it is the one who's at fault. Nowhere it says that. Rather, the scriptures say everyone who's part of the process is liable. Everyone is responsible for what's happening. Yes?
I have a question in this regard. That you started that Madan Gopal Prabhu did you, right? Now, when he hits you, right, is it your karma you are getting back?
Definitely.
How is like, now there is a lot of shooting going on in the school. Small kids, innocent kids are dead. So the police should punish those people, or they should say like, oh, it's a kid's karma and they should get it?
Oh, it's the job of the state. Right? There's certain persons who are authorized by the Lord as agents of Krishna's Shasana Danda. Right? Krishna has a stick of rule, of punishment. And there are certain persons in this world who are authorized to function in that regard. Most importantly, the king or the state has a job of giving criminals what they deserve. And there's no reaction for that when done through the proper channels. Right? Similarly, parents have to discipline the child. Right? This is a role that Krishna has given to the parent. Similarly, the spiritual master. So there's certain, Bhagavatam describes this, Pita na sasyat, Guru na sasyat, Pita na sasyat. There's that verse, right? One should not become a spiritual master, one should not become a parent, one should not become a deva. It's their job also, the demigods. One should not become a king. Certain roles that require us to give what is coming. But me and Madan Gopal, we don't share that. Right? I'm not his father, I'm not his guru. So in that case, there's no reason for me to give him his due karma.
No, but when he's hitting you or he's doing something wrong to you, isn't it that your karma are getting back to you
Sure.
in his form?
Yes, yes.
So same way, sometimes this is really bewildering, you know, that there are so many kids in the world, only few kids get shot. So isn't it that their karma they were shot? How do we look at this whole scenario being a devotee, you know?
Yes, so this is a little off topic, but you, the point you raise is so people often have this confusion about the law of karma. That if you speak, I mean, even if you speak about the law of karma in an audience of college students, they will immediately make this point that, are you blaming the victim? When someone gets hurt, then are you saying, well, they deserved it? And the answer is no. Here's why not. The question of justice and the question of morality or compassion are two different questions here. Let me give you an example. Suppose someone is working on a roof, their roof, they're cleaning the gutters or something. Okay? So some person's working on their roof, and in the process of doing that, they take a couple steps back, don't realize it, and hit the ground. Break a bone, they go to the doctor. Now, it is a fact, a law of nature, that if you walk backwards off of your roof, you will get hurt. You will break a bone. Is that person responsible for what they have done? Well, on one level, yes. Or let's take another example. A person goes to a doctor because they have lung cancer as a result of smoking. Okay? So they've been smoking lifelong and they've got lung cancer. The doctor tells them, they know, the patient knows, and the doctor knows, that it's because of their smoking that they got lung cancer. What is the doctor's response going to be? Well, the cigarette pack says it, right? You deserve it, frankly. See? Cigarette pack says smoking causes lung cancer. You smoked, you got lung cancer. Simple action, reaction. You deserve it. No! Everyone understands that there's some responsibility. The person who walked off the roof should be more careful. Should not do that. The person who is smoking should not smoke anymore. And yet, that does not mean that they still deserve to suffer on a moral level. It doesn't mean that the doctor should not be compassionate to the patient and try his or her level best to cure the patient. Just because he knows the cause of what happened? Should the doctor be any less kind, any less compassionate? No, because ultimately no one deserves to suffer. Everyone deserves to be happy, right? So the fact that as devotees we understand that the law of karma exists in this world does not mean that that somehow justifies us to not be compassionate. In fact, a devotee becomes more compassionate, seeing how the world is caught up in this horrible cycle of karma, where frankly no one knows who started it or whose responsibility it was. Gahana karmano gati. That the law of karma is so complicated that everyone, man, woman, child, everyone is caught up. In the end, every child is going to die. We're all going to die, and none of us deserve to die. Because we're eternal spirit souls. We're meant to be in connection with Krishna. We're meant to be always eternally happy. That's where we deserve to be. And yet, somehow or the other, Prabhupada's wonderful phrase, right? He says, somehow or the other, here we are in this material world, struggling. So just the fact that you understand the logical sequence of cause and effect does not mean that therefore now you cannot have compassion. They're two different things. Karma is a logical sequence of cause and effect. It simply says, if you walk off a roof, you're going to fall and hit the ground. How you respond to that, that shows the quality of the devotee. A devotee sees the law of cause and effect and then still says, Paradukha dukhi. That person's pain is my pain. And that shows the quality of a devotee. Someone who is able to say, oh, that's cause and effect, you deserved it, and shrugs it off, that person is logically very smart and not at all a devotee of the Lord. So, cause and effect, compassion, two very different things. We can intellectually understand that everything in this world happens as a result of a cycle. That does not free us of the responsibility to be compassionate, to be generous, and to be kind. Yes?
I just wanted to add to something which she said. There is also the concept of collective karma, and sometimes innocent people die and we have to learn the lesson of, like, you're talking about the school, but there is a lot of bullying happening in schools, and kids be very crude to each other, or less, for example, people less fortunate or something, they can be very harsh. And that motivates sometimes weaker person kind of retaliate, you know, and so
it is, in general, it is very, very risky and very dangerous to try to point to the causes of another person's suffering. Right. Whatever may be the case, the only time we should attempt to find the cause of suffering is when it relates to us. We have the right to be introspective and to think and to say, maybe Krishna is trying to teach me this. Maybe Krishna is trying to send me this message, or I'm supposed to learn something from it. But it's very risky to try to explain another person's suffering, another person's pain, even if it's crystal clear to us. because of this point. Gahana karmano gati. Right? That we don't know. We don't know. The same people in the same circumstance can have 10 different reasons for that suffering. People are in a plane crash, all going down together. And one person may be getting some karma from their last life because they were a pilot who run a plane into the ground to kill others. Another person, Krishna may be giving them their last experience where they have to surrender fully. They may be like Prahlad Maharaj, thrown off the cliff. Right? This is their last moment to surrender, and they're going back to Godhead. Two very different experiences. We don't know, right? We don't know what that suffering means to that person. Whether they're getting bad karma, whether Krishna is calling them closer for surrender, right? We don't know. We don't know. So, given all of that fact, when we develop that vengeful mentality, it's actually very self-harmful. It just means that we now just made ourselves part of that cycle of karma. We just tied ourselves into it and made ourselves part of the problem. And by asking for forgiveness, this is one of the most powerful effects of that, is we cut ourselves loose from that karmic vicious cycle that we were part of. He hurt me and I hurt him, and he hurt me and I hurt him. And that goes on and on and on. And when one person comes forward and says, I need to ask for forgiveness. Even if you think the other person should do it more, what you have done is you have just cut yourself loose from that chain, from that cycle. So, now, going back to what we were saying about anger. Okay? Anger it's self-destructive. Anger destroys our intelligence. Anger creates this mood of vengeance. Anger makes things disproportionate. One more thing I want to suggest about anger is that anger is almost always misdirected. It's nearly impossible to deploy anger at the right target. How many times have you been wronged at work and come home and taken out that anger at your husband or your wife or your child? It happens all the time, yes? We have some anger pent up on such and such person, and we take it out on this person here. And that person is left, like, what? That just happened. Right? I mean, they did something wrong, but it becomes that Shringi case again. Right? I mean, who knows? Maybe Shringi that day had been wronged by someone. Maybe he was feeling angry towards someone else. And this was just a spark, and he came out on Parikshit Maharaj. But anger almost always does that. Or to the same person, if we're a little bit better, such and such person wronged me, right? So, say, okay, let's pick on Shyamkund Prabhu, right? Today he said something terrible to me in a meeting we had. He was very disrespectful. So, what happens? Well, tomorrow he's cooking prasad. And what's my reaction? The prasad's horrible. Wonderful, right? My anger is about what he said in the meeting. And my reaction is about his prasad. Completely misdirected. We start to dislike everything about that person. In every direction. When in fact, the fault may be there, and it may be very small. Or it may be big, but it's one thing in that person's character. And yet now, we direct it at everything in that person's life. How often does it happen that we can't get along with someone and we stop liking their kids? We can't even stand their children anymore. Because The children are connected to the person I don't like. So anger is such that it's always misdirected. And therefore it's such a problem. Because it forces us. It is what puts us in the situation of having to ask for forgiveness. It's the #1 reason why we have to ask for forgiveness in the first place. Because we misdirected against someone else, and now that problem wasn't solved, because of which I was angry. And now I've got a new problem to solve over here, because I directed that pent-up anger now at someone else, or in another context, to that same person. So on multiple levels, I mean, the scriptures do talk about anger being, you can use it in Krishna's service. And the only time when you can is when anger is deployed directly in proportion to the offense, at directly the cause of the offense, right? Not misdirected, without a desire for vengeance, without a desire to get even. If you can manage all of those things, then we can use anger in Krishna's service. But, I mean, that's really tough to do. It's much better to just control our anger than to try to use it. Because it's not easy, right? It's not easy to accomplish that at all. So, yeah.
In this context, like say when the anger comes, okay, and I want to offend the other person because of the anger, but I control it at my mind level, at the mental platform level, and then it subdues, and then I forget about it. But however, I offended him at the mind level. So then in that case, is that an offense, or should I even go to him? And of course, he's not going to recognize it. Doesn't make sense to him because I just had the offense only at my mind level. Only I know that. So in that case, first question is that an offense? Second is, how do I handle that?
Yes. If we are angry at someone in our mind, it is an offense. But it's something that is much too common in this age. Our primary attempt has to be to avoid it actually showing up in words or in action. Usually it does in some way, it shows up, but sometimes we can suppress it. We can hold on to it, we can be successful. And that we should consider a success. And we should give ourselves a pat on the back for doing that. To swallow anger is a really heroic thing to do. And one thing to remember here is we can swallow it physically, but then if it's swirling inside, it's only a matter of time before it comes out again. None of us are so powerful, such great yogis, that we can keep it swirling on the inside and not have it come out on the outside. It will happen, Prabhu, please.
So Prabhu, you talked about the anger, you talked about the pride also, right? And these are obstacles for humility in one sense. But the anger and pride, they are part of our modes of nature which we acquired because of past karma, right? So the question I have is, how do we get rid of this? Because how do we be more humble? How do we become more humble, right? Because if you look at the Sistashtakam prayer, the verse 3 talks about the humility, and the subsequent verses talk about the surrender. But in real life, it looks like we have to surrender first and get the humility. So how do you achieve all these things?
Yeah. So it's a great question. How do we achieve this humility and this reduction in anger? So let me speak about the anger point first in terms of practicing it, because that was exactly where we were going next. Is to say, well, what do we do about that anger, right? Which is the primary cause of putting us in situations where we have to ask for forgiveness to start off with. The key thing is to take each one of those elements that we discussed about anger and to turn it on its head, right? To break that apart. So let me explain. The one thing we talked about, so the first thing is that desire for immediate vengeance, right, when it flares up. the first thing about anger, before we can even get it out of our system all the way, right, deeply, is to not act upon it. Right? That's the first thing, right? And therefore, the most important thing in regards to anger is just 3 words. Actually, that's just 2 words. Walk away. Right? That the first thing we have to do is not act upon it. It's just to walk away. We may be rude. We may commit offense by walking away. But it is far better than if we engage. In other words, the first thing we have to do is just a simple thing of just recognizing when we are angry. No one can help us do this. No one can make us do this. We just have to understand ourselves. Just the basic thing of recognize the symptoms when that anger is welling up inside. It happens to all of us. And to walk away. Whether physically speaking or metaphorically. We walk away from our computer screen if we have to, before we send that nasty email back. Right? But then, it's still there in the heart. And it's still swirling and cooking inside. Right? The khichdi is cooking. So then, we have to turn off the flame. And we can use anger's disproportionate quality against it by trying to put it in proportion. To look at the situation and to ask, what is really at stake? Why am I so angry? And what is really at stake in this situation? What do I feel is going to go bad? What has this person done wrong? And usually we realize that whatever we were blowing up the situation to be, actually the consequences of that are much smaller than we expected. We thought that what that person does has just ruined it for me for the next year. It's horrible. How dare they? When in fact we realize that the result of that is much less. It needs to be placed in proportion. If Shringi had just taken one step back and said, okay, let me really think about the proportion of this offense. What am I losing by this person's behavior? How have I been harmed? Just asking that basic question and forcing ourselves to answer it. The snake is around my neck. What have I lost? And you realize, well, nothing much. A little bit something. Right? But it's much less than my anger was. But thirdly, then asking ourselves, well, what is the cause of my anger? Where is it coming from? What is the source of it? Because anger is not an emotion that just emerges on its own. Anger emerges because that person has threatened something that we hold dear. And if we identify what it is, we can reduce the amount, the intensity of our anger. Is it that this person has humiliated me in front of my peers? We can ask ourselves, will my colleagues now think horribly of me? Or will they continue to respect me? And most of the time we realize that people are very smart. They see that X person is humiliating Y person. They don't think less of Y person at all. In fact, they usually think higher of Y person. That this person did not respond in so much anger. Or are they questioning my integrity? Or did they destroy something that I hold dear? Someone came to my home and they damaged something that I like very much. That's important to me. Okay, so we ask ourselves, what is the attachment? Because anger is born of what, according to Gita? Lust. Desire. Or to put it in a less, kind of in a more general way, craving. Kama is desire, intense desire, craving after something. Lust as in the sense of, too easily we can think of lust only as sexual desire. That's one thing, of course. But so many forms of kama are there, intense craving. Kama-esha, krodha-esha, rajoguna, samatva. Anger is born of desire. So if we identify the underlying desire that is threatened, the attachment that is threatened underneath, then we come to recognize, actually, this is not deserving of my anger. This thing or whatever it might be. No, I can step back from it. I don't have to be so attached to whatever that might be. There's one other reason that anger is so difficult to give up, and we like to keep it. It's because anger is actually very pleasurable. There's a pleasure, a happiness that comes from being angry. I know this sounds very counterintuitive, but when we feel anger, especially if it's self-righteous anger, anger born of someone having wronged us, you see, the problem with pride is that it's self-centered. Right? It's all about me. Anger is exactly the same way. Anger provides us an exclusive time to be thinking just about me. When you're feeling angry, are you thinking about what led the other person to do what they did? What their situation was that led to that act that they did against us? What pain they might be going through? Of course not. Because we're angry. And anger provides us an opportunity to just focus on ourselves. To be self-righteous. To feel like for once we are right and the world is wrong. And it's a very low form of pleasure, but it is pleasure nevertheless. We are pleasure-seeking beings. And so when we actively maintain something, when we refuse to give up something, it is because it is giving us some form of happiness. Anger, self-pity, indignity, righteousness, these all help us. It's about me. Focusing on me. It's so much less joyful to have to understand the complexity of the situation. Actually, that person was going through their own problems. That's why they lashed out at me. I should be, considerate of what they were going through. It's too complicated. Anger lets us just feel, well, I was right, they were wrong. There's very few times in this world where we get a black and white scenario. It's always complicated in this world. Someone did something wrong to me, but then I also did something wrong to them. It was a very complicated situation. But when we get angry, things are so simple. Right? It's so simple. They are bad. I was a victim. I'm good. I was wronged. And that's the pleasure, to have that satisfaction. Okay? Yes, Soumya.
How do you deal with envy?
So,
What she said?
how do we deal with envy? So, this is one of the fundamental causes of anger. One of the fundamental causes of anger and of having to ask for forgiveness. I've had to ask forgiveness many times in my life. In a few instances, in very serious ways, very significant ways. Like there's some easy acts of forgiveness where you've done something wrong, it was unintended, but in other cases it becomes more significant. But there was one instance in my life where someone asked forgiveness of me, of something I was really hurt by. And to this day, it was one of the most impressive acts of forgiveness seeking that I have experienced. One, it was directed towards me, so I had a front row seat, right? But the one thing that this person did that was so powerful was that they identified the cause, the reason for their offense. And that reason was envy. They had the courage to come up and say that, you know, the reason I mistreated you that day was because I think somewhere inside I'm jealous. I'm envious of what you have and what I don't have. And it was so impressive, so powerful. Two things happened right away. Two things happened right away. Number one, my anger towards that person changed 180 degrees to compassion. Like, I thought, wow, this person is suffering because I have something that they don't. I mean, I felt bad all of a sudden. Like that, this is, you know, I felt guilty that I had something that this person didn't. And I felt like I wanted to share. Like, what can I do to help you? Right? That anger was shifted to compassion right away. And the second thing that happened was my respect for them tripled. Like, this is the point I was making earlier, that you never lose out when you make a genuine apology. I looked at that person and I thought, wow, I don't think I have that kind of courage. Right? To go to that person and really bear what was the internal cause. Right? I'm likely to say it was a misunderstanding, and you know, it was, I don't know what happened, I was really tired that day. I'll make a genuine apology, but to get to the root of the problem, and I'm sure there was something in me too which was eliciting. I mean, I'm sure I was partially to blame as well. There's no doubt about it. Because that's, we've discussed, that's the nature of this world. Right? I was probably eliciting something in that person that caused the reaction that it did. But when he came out and said it, my just respect for him it just skyrocketed, right? And to this day, I have to see that person with respect. Like, I can't dismiss that person as being just, you know, someone. It's amazing what that can do, right? So, I mean, we can talk about this for a long time, but in short, the answer to your question about how to deal with envy is just to admit it. Just to admit it. It's a very difficult thing to admit because it forces us to recognize that we're lacking in something that another person has, that they're better in some way. But if we admit it, and at the very least, if we can't admit it to them, if we do that manavena, if we offer genuine appreciation, if we praise that person, it helps to decrease the intensity of our envy. If we don't want to do it, but if we go to that person and say, you know, I really, really appreciate what you do here. The key is that genuine appreciation, not a fake groveling, and everyone can see through that. I remember one time I was searching on a tour in different parts of India looking for manuscripts of Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas for my PhD work. And one of the places I went to was the, well, I should not mention, but anyway, it was a museum and archive of manuscripts in a very nice city, very nice place. And I spent, I don't know, 3-4 days sitting there every single day from asking them for access to one particular manuscript. I just wanted to see. It was important for my work. Every day. And every day they would, you know, yes, it's coming, yeah, it was. And the whole day they would, all the workers, it was a government institution, they would all lie there sleeping. It was hot weather, and literally, they put two of their chairs together. Except when the gatekeeper came in and went, the magistrate is coming. The magistrate is coming. The supervisor is coming. And immediately, everyone was up, on their feet. Haji, Haji, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Blah, 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 blah. And they're all on their computers and working it very much. And the obsequious way in which everyone bowed and paid respects and honored and praised him for being God incarnate on earth. And all of that, you know, everyone knew, all sides. He knew it was not genuine. They knew it was not genuine. I could certainly see it was not genuine, right? That kind of thing, anyone can see through. Not just a devotee, not just a pure devotee. Anyone can see through it. Okay? So, now, let me just recap real quick. Okay? We've got how do we recognize when forgiveness is necessary? Okay? We spoke about external signs and internal signs. Then we talked about what are the obstacles for asking for forgiveness. Anger and pride. There's a third and final one I want to mention, but more briefly. And this is fear. You've already mentioned this in your comments. The fear of many things. Of our apology being rejected. We go and we humble ourselves, and the person goes, and too late for that. Too little, too late. We're afraid of that kind of rejection. We're afraid of being crushed further. We've spoken about this. That person may say, well, this isn't enough. How about a public apology to the whole congregation on Sunday evening? That's what we need. We're afraid of being completely smashed. Or it's just difficult. It's just difficult for us to take that step. In that situation, besides the person asking for forgiveness and the person giving forgiveness, there's a third entity that is very useful, and that is the mediator. To involve a third party that you trust and they respect can do wonders. In the story of Indra and Krishna, Indra was having a really tough time coming before the Lord because he was really afraid. He had just tried to destroy Vrindavan. What was he afraid of? That Krishna would destroy him. I mean, his offense was very serious. He was genuinely afraid. So, who did he bring as mediator? The cow. The heavenly cow. Someone he respected and someone Krishna loved. And put her forward, hid behind her, and then asked for the apology. And Surabhi offers her own prayers to Krishna. Just something to soften the situation. So that when you're asking for forgiveness, you feel protected. Because asking for forgiveness is an act of making ourselves vulnerable. That is clear. We bare ourselves, we become weak, and we're scared. So having someone who is generally senior to us, maybe an equal to the person from whom we're asking forgiveness, if not their senior also, but having someone there who can offer that kind of mediation or protection, it actually helps on both sides. The mediator can make sure that the person asking for forgiveness is not totally crushed in the process, and that person can also ensure that the person who's receiving that forgiveness, being asked, is getting a genuine apology. That it's not just one of these, I'm so sorry that you felt hurt by something I totally didn't do wrong. It's like a genuine apology. What that is, we'll talk about in a minute. Right? So the mediator can function really well in that way. And very often we find in the scriptures that there's someone there in that mediator role who is helping the two parties to come together. So these are the three obstacles I wanted to discuss: anger, pride, and fear that prevent us from asking for forgiveness. Now, the question is, how do we do it? What's the approach? If we look at all the scriptural stories for how forgiveness is asked between devotees and between devotees of the Lord, we see a consistent pattern emerge. A consistent pattern emerge. The first thing that happens is, we've already discussed. The person asking forgiveness expresses genuine appreciation for the person who they have wronged. Indra offers his prayers to Krishna. Durvasa Muni glorifies Maharaj Ambarish. His is really short because his darshan chakra is behind it. But he still takes a moment to ask. Shamek Rishi offers wonderful praise of Parikshit Maharaj, calls him Mahabhagavato Raja. Says he's a great Bhagavata, great devotee of the Lord. Brahma offers so many prayers to Krishna. Everyone takes first the time to offer appreciation as a way to overcome the false pride that was the obstacle to begin with. But that we've discussed, okay? Making that praise genuine. The best way to make it genuine, what's the best way to ensure that our appreciation is genuine and not the stuff that those government workers were doing to their boss? How do we ensure that it's genuine?
It should come from heart.
Yes, but how do we make sure it comes from the heart? Or even if it doesn't come from the heart, how do we make it a real appreciation?
At first, say what you did wrong, and what, like, someone said sorry to me, and they hit the exact spot, like they said the exact thing that made me feel bad, and then that made me feel really good, and they knew exactly what they did wrong. So if you tell someone what you actually did wrong, like that right thing, that right point, then that's like the first thing that will kind of what's happening.
So you're too smart, okay? You just stole the thunder of my next point. So that's a very important point, okay? But we're not there yet. We're not yet saying what we did wrong, okay? First, we're just offering appreciation to another person. And the best way to do that genuinely is to be specific. To be very specific about what we appreciate. And that just, it forces us to actually think about what we're saying. Instead of saying, Prabhu, you're such a wonderful devotee. We ask ourselves, what is it about that devotee which is wonderful? I really appreciate how you always, when you do artis, it's just you're so attentive. Or I really like how you lead kirtans, or whatever it is, right? I really like how you never overreact in difficult situations. We find something that is specific. And that's the clearest indicator to the person that the appreciation is genuine. Otherwise, it can be taken very easily as a cheap apology. By doing that, we are increasing the likelihood that our apology will be received, that it will be accepted. Because you're moistening the ground before you make the apology. Right? You're softening that person's heart, which is probably very hard right now as a result of whatever has transpired. And you need to soften it. And the worst thing is fake appreciation. It makes the person even more angry. Like, oh, now you're trying to flatter me? So we want to make it specific. Right? Specific. something that that person cannot deny. Yeah, I have to admit, I do those artis pretty well. So you were going to say something?
What if, we are talking a situation where, two people can understand whatever the offenses or the qualities or, when, appreciation. What if two people cannot necessarily talk the same languages? I'm thinking about, for instance, two different cultures. Sometimes you do something, you can talk about it, but the other person cannot understand because it's not the same language.
Yes. Yes. So if there is actually cultural miscommunication, then the role of the mediator becomes even more important. Then we really should get someone else involved, someone we can both trust, who is able to act as a bridge. That happens very often. It's a very important point, actually. That we may be speaking past each other, or that may be the cause of the offense to begin with. So finding a mediator to bridge that gap is crucial. So we express the appreciation, okay? Number two, then we come to the point Soumya was making, that we make a specific statement of what we did wrong. Too often we go directly to "I'm so sorry." But a sorry cannot, again, it's not accepted as genuine unless the person is willing to specify what they did wrong. The immediate response in a person's mind is, well, sorry for what? What are you actually sorry about? That it's a specific apology for our action. We see this in Indra's case very, very well. When he comes to Krishna, he lays out exactly what he did wrong. Even though it's very obvious to everyone what he did wrong. But he makes it a point, he takes the time to lay it out. This is what I did wrong, this is what I did wrong, and this is what I did wrong. And specifying that in particularity gives the person an indication of exactly what we're sorry for. When we make that apology, then it really, okay, a couple things. It needs to be specific. It needs to be unconditional. Unconditional means that we don't follow up our apology in the same breath by saying, I did something wrong, but that person also, they also said something wrong in that situation. Or I did something wrong, but it was complicated. Or I did something wrong, but you overreacted. It ruins it. It completely ruins it. If we wanted to point out what that person did wrong, then better we wait until we're ready to actually say, I'm sorry. Right? Because all the apology requires is that we identify what we did wrong and apologize for it. The fact that they did something wrong may be true, but it's irrelevant. That behooves them to come forward and say that. But all we have to do, our duty to get the load of guilt off of our shoulders, is to say, I'm so sorry, I made this mistake. So it's specific and it's unconditional. That it's not ifs and buts. If Durvasa Muni had come at the end and said, but you really should have waited before you took that water. I agree, I shouldn't have tried to kill you, but you should have waited. Do you agree? Then no apology, right? Sudarshan Chakra is still there. Our conscience will still bite us, right? Because we turned that moment of apology, a really good moment, into another moment for attack. And so often we end up doing that, besides ourselves. We don't want to, but we still end up doing that. We ruin a perfectly good moment to apologize by adding some condition to it. By apologizing apologizing for something else. Right? Like the worst form of apology is, I am so sorry you feel hurt. Because where does that place the blame? On you. You're the one who feels hurt. Any more reasonable person, someone who is more intellectually, emotionally mature, would not have felt so hurt by what I said. But I'm sorry you felt so hurt. This is like a typical political apology. If you look at how politicians apologize on Twitter, this is standard fare. Or celebrities or someone. I'm so sorry my words were painful for you. No. I'm so sorry my words caused you pain. The best way to say it is, I'm so sorry I said that. I should not have said that. That's all. The fact that it caused pain is obvious. That's why you're apologizing. But it's not that you're sorry that it turned out to be such a bad reaction. You're sorry that you did it, even if they have handled it well. Right? So, we express appreciation. We make a specific indication of where we went wrong. We admit our mistake. And then the third part is we feel genuinely remorseful. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but Prabhupada specifically says in the Sringi episode, he says, it is the fire of remorse, of repentance, that burns up the reaction of the mistake that we have caused. Now, let me suggest that these two things are not the same. Admitting our mistake and feeling remorse for it are two different things. Why? How is it possible to admit your mistake and not feel remorse?
You can be saying it to get off the hook. Superficial.
Yes, it can be superficial, right? That you're saying it to get off. But suppose you genuinely admit that it was a mistake. Why would you not feel bad about it? Say you actually do understand it was a mistake. Why might you not feel remorse? I should not have said that, but I don't feel so bad about it.
But you're proud about that? You're proud?
Yes, maybe.
Somehow justifying yourself still?
Exactly. Because as human beings, we have this amazing capacity to justify our mistakes. So here's okay. So I've got a few on my own list, but I want to hear from you. What are some of the ways in which we justify the mistakes we make? We understand it's a mistake, but we don't feel bad about it because what?
It's not something that caused me to react that way. My reaction is justified.
Yes, because you started it. You said something that elicited that reaction. I should not have reacted, but you said something. Right? Good. What else? How else do we justify? Accepts the bhava. He accepts the mood. So I have to. Yeah. So we justify based on our intentions. My intentions were good. Yeah.
This wasn't out of anger. This was just something coming out just at the moment. This isn't how I truly feel.
Yes. So it was a result of misunderstanding, right? It was a cause of misunderstanding. So no one's at fault, even me, right? Because we were all confused. So it's no one's at fault. Good. Yeah.
Because what I did was the most logical choice.
Yes. Yes. So it was intellectually the right thing to do. Now, emotionally, it caused a problem to someone, but I reasoned it out. Right? Logically, it was the right thing to do. In fact, the scriptures say that if someone criticizes my spiritual master, I should cut out their tongue. Right? So I was following the scriptures when I did it. Completely rational. Now, they lost a tongue, that's sad. I'll apologize, but it wasn't wrong. I don't feel bad for what I did.
Teacher.
Okay, go ahead.
Teachers sometimes, or anybody in a position, can justify their actions by being rude to somebody, because I have to correct you, because for benefits of everyone, I have to do it to you. I have to say it now.
That my position allows me to do it. Right? This is a big one. That I'm senior and you're junior. Therefore, I can do this. And this was Shringi's problem. This is Shringi's problem. We're Brahmins and you're a Kshatriya. He literally says that you are just dogs waiting to eat at our table. How dare you come demanding food or water? If we throw you some scraps, it's okay. But we don't owe you anything. So we can be under this false illusion. Durvasa Muni was, I'm senior, you're junior. My position allows me to do this. Therefore, I can cause offense if I want to, and it's not an offense. That's a really risky business, because all the stories we've heard so far are of seniors offending juniors. Dhruva Maharaj was offended by who? His senior. Suruchi, his mother, stepmother. Amrish was offended by Durvasa Muni, his senior. Parikshit Maharaj was, Shringi was offended by, I'm all confused now. But anyway, the seniors can offend the juniors, no problem. Juniors can offend seniors. It's the same thing around, right? And using our position as justification for it also prevents genuine remorse. Here's another common one, right? I did something wrong, but I've had a really tough week. I was really stressed out. Things have been really difficult. So we don't feel so bad about what we did. Or that person provoked me into it. Or they deserved it anyway. They had it coming to them. Or they overreacted. Or the last one is the same thing you said. Right? In all of those capacities, we allow justification for it. The only thing that can help mitigate our apology, the only thing, and this, when I said we should make an unconditional apology, there's one thing that we can clarify to defend ourselves in an apology, which actually does help. It's our intent. It's our intent. If we can dig down in ourselves and clarify what our intent was, sometimes the intent was genuinely good. You know, I really didn't mean to, it came out wrong, but that's not what I was intending to say. Or sometimes the intent can be terrible, like that person I told you, I was envious of you, I was jealous. But clarifying the intent can actually help a lot. It can make us feel better and make the other person feel better. It's one of those few things in the case of an apology that actually is beneficial for both sides. If you say to the person, you know, I was really stressed out that week, what's the response going to be from the person you're apologizing to? What? I'm not busy? I'm not stressed out? You think that justifies it? If you say something like, well, I'm in this role, I'm your superior, they'll be like, okay, so this is how superiors abuse their juniors? If you say something like, you know, you provoked me, well, there's no apology anyway. You started it. But the one thing that you can clarify, that we can clarify and say that actually helps both sides is intent. Is intent. whatever the intent might be. And that we need to dig into ourselves and see, what was my real intent? What caused it? And that really helps. The other person be at peace, and for us to be at peace. That yes, this is the problem I need to work on, or no, really, genuinely, I was not trying to harm this person. My intent was good. Ramchandra? Yes, good.
So a reflection and a question. So reflection first. This was really, really helpful, and it unpacked the patterns. I think in one-off situations, this would be really powerful. I think in more complicated situations where, say, in a devotional community, there's a history of that has built up over time. Maybe mediation might be the way to go, because it might be really tough to untangle all the knots of misunderstandings, or in case of a marriage, or in case of broken friendships, or whatever. So all those points are super powerful. Thank you. The question, unless you have a reflection back on the reflection. Sorry.
Yeah, I do, but please do your question also. Yeah.
Well, the question will lead us in a different direction. So.
Okay, so then let me just say that the point you raised, which I'll repeat in just a minute, is very important. And in fact, it's the point I wanted to conclude on today. So let me just mention briefly the final step, okay? Before I come to that point and we conclude, okay? We appreciate that person. We specify what our mistake was. We feel genuinely repentful. This is for our benefit, so we can burn up that bad karma. And the fourth is that we make some suggestion for correcting the situation, for recompense. Right? That it's not just on the level of words, that we say, what can I do to set things right? Sometimes it can be as simple as inviting that person home for prasad. Other times it means actually fixing something that we've damaged or destroyed. By saying, no, I will go and speak to this person and make sure that they understand that you were not responsible for this. I implicated you, I criticized you, I need to fix your reputation, I will do that. Or sometimes it's replacing something that we have broken, a physical object that we've done something wrong, whatever it might be. Right? But making a specific plan, a suggestion, would this help, can I do this? And we may get something back in return. That person would say, no, don't do that, that'll just make things worse. Or let's really just drop it at this point, I'm satisfied. Or, that won't help, how about this, can you please do this, right? So, making some practical remediation is important. Then that actually puts, like they say, put your money where your mouth is, right? It has some practical impact on it. But now, to this point that you're making, that situations can get very, very complex if they're not just between one or two devotees over a specific instance. Perhaps there's a history of conflict between certain families or within a community or something. And then this leads me to my final point, which is to say that the process of forgiveness, or asking forgiveness, is something that we have been speaking about so far as kind of an event, as a one-off event. This happened, you go and ask for apology like this, here are the steps to follow. But seeking apology is a process. Seeking forgiveness is a process. And sometimes it takes time for it to be effective. The first time we seek forgiveness, the person doesn't trust us because we've lost trust between each other. So they're like, okay, thanks. But the wound is not healed. Sometimes we have to go a second round at the apology. Sometimes because they haven't accepted it, or sometimes because we weren't able to do it genuinely or as deeply as we needed to the first time. I remember in my life, at one point when I had made a serious mistake, I understood that, and very soon, like within a day or two, I wrote an apology letter as genuinely as I could and sent it to them. Didn't get a response. Now, for some time after that, I thought, well, I've done my share. I apologized. And then it took some time because I realized I was still not there yet. There was still anger in me for what had happened. And I recognized that as a result of that, why did I end up sending an email to this devotee? There was something in me preventing me from being able to face that person. Even a phone call would have been better. But even better was to just talk to that person. And I wasn't able to. Right? And in my mind, I was justifying that justification. Well, I've done my job. I've sent the email. See, it was 100% genuine. No ifs and buts and no conditions. Now, if they don't accept it, there must be a little arrogance from their side too. But on further reflection and given further time, I realized, well, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm holding back here somewhere. And so it took another round of seeing them face to face in the eye. And I realized then that the email was too easy. That the actual process of facing them and making the apology, that was tough. That was very difficult. And difficult on multiple levels. One, I had to make myself vulnerable. But two, I had to also swallow my pride and anger at the fact that their response was not 100%, everything's fine, we hug, we're all good now. It wasn't like that. They didn't give me the oh, it's okay that I was looking for. Still. It took a third try. It took another round. So, what I mean to say is that apology can be a process. Because essentially what we're trying to do when we apologize is to heal a relationship. The point of apology is not to check a box and say, well, I did my job. Okay? The point is that it's to heal a relationship. And healing a relationship can take some time. So we may have to come around at it. But one thing we should remember is that time is our friend. Time is our friend. Remember, we started off by saying that the time factor is the supersoul within our heart. And he is Sudarshan Chakra, Gala Chakra. And he is our conscience. And he will chase us to the ends of the earth. He will cut us. But there's a soft side to Paramatma as well. Paramatma is not our enemy, he's our friend. And as the time factor, Krishna not only destroys, but he also heals. He heals. And when we come around, right, life is like a spiral. My spiritual master Hanumat Bishop Swami, he says this often. Life is like a spiral. We come around the same points again and again and again. But each time, hopefully, a little higher, a little higher, a little higher. And so, we understand ourselves better, we understand the person better, we get better at it, and each time it becomes easier, and we're at a place to do it better, to do it more genuinely, to do it more purely, and more in a more heartfelt way. And that's Krishna acting. That's Krishna acting. Krishna, as the time factor, he's the great healer who mends relationships, who heals wounds, if we try, right? If we give a stab at it. And this is, we find in the case of Durvasa and Ambarish Maharaj, at this point of making recompense, that after this whole thing happened, and Durvasa Muni, Ambarish Maharaj prays to Sudarshan to go away and spare Durvasa, then it's all over. What's the first thing they do? Ambarish Maharaj says, now, where did we leave off? You were going to eat, right? You please sit down and eat. And he feeds them nice prasad with his own hands. And then Durvasa Muni makes sure, he says, now I want to watch you eat. You sit down and take prasad. So, the point is, we may have to make an effort at it. It may take a little bit of time to keep at it, to come at it again and again and again. But we benefit. We gain through the process. We purify the heart. We clean these bad qualities that we've talking about, and we advance in our service to Krishna, in our service to Guru. So in the end, we're the winner. Right? This is how we started. That we're the winner. When we take the position of apologizing, of asking for forgiveness, we win. We don't lose in the process. Neither does that person. They win too. But that's the important thing to remember, right? So therefore, it's always worth a try. And Krishna will always guide us from the heart. If we genuinely want to do it, He'll show us how. Right? There's no, I tried to present it as a formula, but it's no 100% formula. Ultimately, we have certain rules of thumb that we can follow, but Krishna is there within the heart, and He will guide us, He'll help us. So, we've got now 2 minutes. You've all been asking questions throughout, which is wonderful. If anyone has any last couple of questions, maybe one, maybe, then I can ask. Maybe someone who hasn't spoken yet. Yes.
Say you've offended someone, you have no idea you've offended them, and they haven't let you know that you've offended them. Obviously, you're suffering the consequence of that. But how do you go about fixing that?
If you know that you don't know.
You don't even know that you offended them. They haven't kind of shown you that they're upset or whatever.
Yeah, then we just have to wait until Krishna shows us that we've committed the offense. Right? Means we inadvertently commit many offenses, there's no doubt about it. Then we just take shelter of Krishna's holy names. They're the ultimate cleanser of all sins and of all offenses. So we take shelter of Krishna's holy name, and we chant and we continue. And if it's something that needs to be fixed, Krishna will let us know if we've made an offense. He will tell us.
What if it takes some time for you to recognize, and then by that time that person is no more?
Yeah, what happens if it takes us some time to recognize, and by that time the person is no more? Then we can still ask for forgiveness. Right? We can still ask. We will never have the privilege of knowing their response, at least not externally. But that doesn't prevent us from asking, because we know that it is never the case that the person is no more. He's always there. And Krishna is always Sakshi. He's always there in the heart as witness to everything that's happening. So we can go through it for our own benefit, even if that person can no longer benefit from our process. So a genuine apology can be done even in a person's absence. Sometimes it helps us to do that apology to another devotee who we can express our mind to. That helps us make it genuine. That I want to tell you about something that I did some years ago to another devotee. That devotee is not here, or that family member or whatever is not here. But will you please listen? Will you please listen, because it will help me make it a genuine apology. So that can be helpful in bringing it out.
This is one reason why we should never delay
Yes. Actually, that's a very important point.
Never delay is practice.
Yes. Very important point. That was actually here and I forgot to cover. That we should never delay. Even if we can do a partial, we start now. We start soon. So anyway, we should stop here. It's time for Aarti. Tomorrow's seminar is focused on how we can give forgiveness when someone comes to us. It sounds easy, it's not easy at all. So stay tuned. Thank you all so much for your attention.